A certain form of pain is one that does not scream, it does not bleed, and it does not bruise. Behind the grin, beneath the rituals, and within the part of you that no one ever really touches, it is just something that lives quietly within you. This suffering is not caused by the outside world. Rather, it is the result of waking up to it. It is the moment when you come to the realization that everything you have constructed your identity on was never actually yours, and that the things you have pursued, love, success, recognition, and enlightenment, were just costumes wrapped over a soul that is quietly dying to be seen. The process of spiritual awakening does not start with happiness. Rather, it starts with heartache. The kind of heartbreak that causes your reality to be shattered in two, that causes the framework of everything you believed you were to be shattered, and that causes you to stand naked in the mirror of your own consciousness, unable to turn away from it. This is something that they never tell you. This is not the truth, at least not at first. They tell you that awakening is light, that it is lovely, and that it is calm, but this is not the truth. Because waking up is the same as grieving. It is necessary to lament the years that you spent sleeping, to mourn the masks that you wore in order to be loved, to mourn the inner child that you repressed in order to be accepted, and to mourn the truth that you buried in order to survive. This sorrow, despite the fact that it is holy, is painful. It is painful in ways that you are unable to articulate since it is not a part of a single moment. Rather, it is a part of every moment. It is a part of the lifetime of abandonment that you have perpetrated against your own soul, the 100 silent ways that you have said no to yourself specifically for the sake of hearing someone else say yes. It was once written by Carl Jung that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. You, on the other hand, did not avoid facing your own soul. Because you turned inward and walked into fire, you are currently burning, but you are unable to figure out how to heal yourself. Not really, because this is not the kind of wound that can be treated with prescription medication. When it comes to this particular type of wound, it was never intended to be numbed. Rather, it was intended to be transformed. Transformation is not something that occurs in a single breath. Rather, it is something that takes place gradually through the stillness, through the pain, and through the process of unlearning everything that you believed healing would entail. You will not be able to recover by avoiding the pain of your awakening. Rather, you will be able to heal by experiencing it. As a result, the question that should be asked is not, how can I stop this pain? But rather, what is this pain trying to teach me? This is due to the fact that pain is a voice, and if you listen carefully enough, it does communicate with an astounding degree of clarity. It states that you are no longer permitted to betray yourself and make the excuse that it is love. No longer are you permitted to compromise your truth in order to feel like you belong. You can no longer shrink in order to be held. This is no longer permitted. The purpose of this agony is not to punish you. Rather, it is to bring you back to your core, to your power, and to your completeness. However, returning is not a gentle act. Making a return requires opening up the spaces that you have previously closed off. This means allowing the numbness to subside over time. In other words, it involves rescuing your identity from the flames and examining what is left behind. When it comes to healing, this is the kind that does not advertise itself publicly. The appearance of the object is not that of yoga positions, candles, or mantras carved in gold. Rather, it is that of someone crying on the floor. At midnight, it appears as though you are opting for isolation when you would rather be distracted. It is as if you are saying, "I forgive you," to the mirror silently, even though you are not entirely certain that you believe it at this moment. Mainly due to the fact that this suffering that lies behind your waking conceals a secret. It is not the end. Rather, it is the gateway, the threshold between the false you and the genuine you. The version of you that was shaped by the influence of the world, as well as the version of you that was buried alive under the burden of expectations. In addition, something changes as soon as you walk through the door. Instead of pleading to be saved, you begin to discover how to save yourself. This is not accomplished by repairing your shattered parts. Rather, you come to the realization that they were never broken. They were simply exiled. It is not a rush of answers that marks the beginning of healing. Rather, it is a return to presence, to the present moment, to the body that you have forgotten, and to the breath that you used to neglect. For the reason why the discomfort of awakening is not mental, but rather cellular. It resides in the neurological system, in the shoulders that you learn to tense up, in the stomach that you learn to clench up, in the jaw that you learn to mute, and in the heart that you were taught to shut down. And the place where the pain makes its home is where your healing process starts. In the body, in the subtle, in the slow, and in the motionless. This is the insight that Jung directed us toward. The idea that the unconscious is present not just in dreams, but also in the physical world. Changing one's way of thinking is not the key to healing. Rather, it is being whole. Furthermore, wholeness is not a show, but rather a reunion. It is not possible to become entire by appearing to be healed. Rather, you can become complete by letting every aspect of yourself, including the trembling, the angry, and the humiliated, to return to the light. That is what this suffering is pleading for: acceptance, compassion, and a return to one's own home. Not judgment, not exile, and not any additional spiritual bypassing. It is therefore necessary for you to stop attempting to be spiritual and begin attempting to be honest, if you wish to cure the sorrow that was the cause of your awakening. Honest about the anger that you have hidden beneath your serenity, honest about the pain that is hiding behind your wisdom, and honest about the loneliness that is still there within your strength. Mostly due to the fact that within the honesty is where your soul currently resides. When you touch it, when you utter it, the agony begins to soften, not evaporate, but soften, like winter gradually melting into spring, like frost giving way to soil, like silence beginning to breathe again. This is also the case when you speak it. In addition, something will emerge from that soil. It will not be a new identity or a performance. Rather, it will be a truth that is reminiscent of home. Recovery does not take place when you are ready. Rather, it takes place when your soul makes the decision that it is time to return, not to who you were before, but to who you have forgotten. You do not have the ability to schedule it. You do not have the ability to compel it. And you do not have the ability to avoid the pain by claiming that it is divine. Your eyes are wide open. Your breath is shaking. And you have no defenses left to defend yourself against it. And it is at that gathering that the sacred task officially starts. Performing this healing is not something you do for the sake of receiving praise from other people. It is not something that can be captured in a before and after image. It is not something that you discuss in captions. Despite the fact that it is unseen, obtrusive, and quiet, it alters everything. Mainly due to the fact that genuine healing does not make you more significant. Because of this, you become more truthful, and it eliminates everything that was only theatrical. It reveals every instance in which you used knowledge as a mask, every instance in which you used calmness as a way to escape wrath, and every instance in which you used forgiveness as a way to avoid feeling your suffering. Even the way in which you once committed an act of healing is revealed. You start to feel human again as a result of that exposure. You are not elevated or enlightened, but you are human in the most divine sense of the word. It is not a limitation to be totally human. Rather, it is a sacred achievement since the ego does not want to be human. It has the desire to be exceptional, preeminent, and remarkable. Nevertheless, the soul yearns for completeness, and completeness entails incorporating everything that you had previously disregarded, including the suffering that got you to this place. And your darkness is not just shadow. It is sadness, it is longing, and it is all of the unmet needs that spiritual bypassing sought to erase with mantras and vision boards. Carl Jung observed, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And your darkness is not just shadow." However, you cannot heal by retreating into light. Rather, you can heal by walking back into your body, which is the body that contained all of your truths that you have not yet lived. Regardless of how spiritual you may sound, you may recover by listening to the sadness that you are experiencing. Allowing the inner child to scream what the adult version of you has learned to repress is a vital step in the healing process. The process of healing involves becoming full enough to be able to hold contradictions, such as being able to cry and feel powerful, to grieve and feel grounded, to be terrified and still move forward, to feel damaged and still belong simultaneously. In this context, coming is not the focus. Rather, it is about allowing. When you give yourself permission to stop pretending that waking makes you indestructible, when you give yourself permission to recognize that clarity can sometimes seem like emptiness, and when you give yourself permission to stay with the rawness, you're not treating it as a problem to be solved, but rather as a presence to meet. Because there is something that resides in that rawness. It is something that is alive, something that is old, and something that you have silenced whenever you have pretended to be okay. And when you eventually encounter it, neither with guilt nor with avoidance, but with reverence, you come to the realization that you are not just mending the pain that you experienced as a result of your awakening. You are also healing the anguish that was always present. There is nothing new about the emptiness, the heartache, or the loss of identity. All of these things were merely unveiled by the waking. From your upbringing, from your ancestors, and from the collective traditions you learned about what it meant to be worthy, it was buried, encoded, and passed down from generation to generation. It is now that you are breaking the spell. You are standing in the middle of your own psychological storm and declaring, I will no longer abandon myself. Not to be liked, not to be understood, and not even to be healed faster. This is because genuine healing is not about speed. Rather, it is about depth. It is about becoming so firmly established in your own truth that even the void itself becomes a companion, a learning environment, and a sacred place. And it is in that place that you make the decision to stop trying to transform into someone else. You begin to recall who you were before the world informed you who you should be. However, the experience of remembering does not always seem like joy. At times, it might feel like anger, and at other times, it can feel like despair. There are times when it seems like nothing at all, but you continue to be there. You continue to breathe, you continue to soften, and you continue to come up, not to alleviate the suffering, but to love the person who is experiencing it. The healing process starts not in the narrative or the theory, but rather in the body, in the breath. This is how the healing process begins. As soon as you stop performing and begin to observe yourself in its entirety, you will no longer question yourself. When will this be over? And you begin to inquire, what exactly am I learning from this? The answers are not immediately obvious, but they are present in the manner in which your shoulders begin to sag, in the manner in which your breath begins to get more profound, and in the manner in which your voice begins to shake because it is finally happening again. It's possible that you come to the realization that you are not your pain for the very first time in your life. You are the one who is able to hold it. Not only are you not your tale, but you are also the environment in which it takes place. You do not represent the wound. Rather, you are the healer that sprang from the wound. This marks the beginning of a healing process that will never be finished, not because it is deficient in any way, but rather because it is alive. The process of healing, as you come to see, is not a destination. Rather, it is a rhythm, a spiral, a holy unraveling and remembering that occurs repeatedly. It is not to punish you, but rather to disclose you, to call you even closer to the heart of your humanity, the spot where your wounds cease being secrets and start being symbols. Just when you think you have reached the center, another layer appears, not to punish you, but to reveal you. Mainly due to the fact that pain is not intended to compel you to endure suffering for an indefinite period of time. Rather, it is intended to make you conscious of the patterns you inherited, cognizant of the stories you absorbed, and conscious of the negotiations you made with silence in order to survive. And now here you are, awake and in pain, not because you're broken, but because you're finally experiencing something that the previous version of yourself was not able to withstand. This is something that no one tells you about healing. It takes strength to hurt honestly, not the strength to hide it or the strength to divert from it, but the strength to let it go through you, to let it soften you without swallowing you, to to let it transform you without defining you. This is something that no one tells you about healing. The beginning of true spiritual development is not in the amount of knowledge you possess, but rather in the degree to which you are able to handle what appears to be chaos with a gentle hand. The pain that is the source of your awakening is not something that you should try to force through. Rather, it is something that you should learn to befriend. This should not be done all at once, not in some grand cinematic moment of transcendence, but rather gradually, gently, and honestly. The next morning, when you wake up, you realize that you are no longer terrified of your own feelings of grief. You are no longer in a hurry to get away from your fury. No longer do you need meaningless contacts to dull the pain of your loneliness. You allow these aspects of yourself to exist. You allow them to express themselves, and as a result, you become full, not cured. You become entire. Carl Jung imparted to us the knowledge that the objective of the individuation process, which refers to the maturity of the psyche on a spiritual level, is not perfection, but rather completeness. The merger of all that has been separated within you is what it is all about. The light and the shadow, the child and the adult, the anger and the forgiveness, the masculine and the feminine, the divine and the terribly human. It is not in theory that they begin to meet, but rather in the experience that you have lived. Some change takes place. Instead of focusing on achieving enlightenment, you begin to focus on becoming realistic. You start to have faith in the wisdom that your own healing process possesses. As time goes on, you come to see that suffering is not the antithesis of progress. Rather, it is progress. Mainly due to the fact that whenever you choose to bear the pain rather than give up on yourself, you are reclaiming a portion of your soul. When you breathe through the emptiness rather than filling it with noise, you create space for the sacred. This happens again and time again. The more times you say, "This hurts, but I will stay," the more you transform into a person who is no longer afraid of the dark. It is not the kind of power that you use to exert control over other people. Rather, it is the kind of power that enables you to remain unshakable in a world that is constructed on illusion. Because at this point, you are not trying to escape the void. Rather, you are sitting within it. There, you light a candle, and you identify it as your home. People will take notice of you not because you are more vocal, but rather because you are more profound. Your physical presence shifts. You are no longer required to provide an explanation of who you are, nor are you required to be comprehended. These days, you no longer bargain for your value. Differently, you enter rooms using your feet. Without making any apologies, you take up space. You're able to say no fearlessly, because healing has made you honest, and honesty has made you free. You express your truth not for the purpose of receiving affirmation, but rather for the purpose of aligning yourself. Even yet, you will continue to feel pain and shed tears. Despite the fact that you will continue to lose those who are unable to meet you here, you will no longer lose yourself. It is not that the world has changed or that the suffering has vanished. Rather, it is that you have finally stopped abandoning the one thing that is most important, the self that lies behind the story. This is the greatest healing of all. The self that was never broken, but rather buried, hushed, and waiting for your permission to return is the self that has never been broken. In addition, now that it has come back, everything seems different. It is not easier or simpler, but it is more accurate. Moreover, that truth, regardless of how unfiltered or incomplete it may be, becomes your path. The only thing you need to do is take the next honest step, which is to say the thing you've been avoiding, to rest when the world tells you to produce, to feel when your instincts scream to shut down, and to have faith that your agony has a purpose even if you can't define it yet. You don't need to see the entire route forward. The reason for this is that the pain that you are experiencing is not only about what is breaking. Rather, it is about what is attempting to be born. The thing that is attempting to come into being is not a new identity. It is not a more polished version of you. It is not someone who is superior, more enlightened, or more desired. The self, the genuine self, the complete self, the unfiltered, unpolished, and exposed version of yourself is what is being initiated. One who does not perform, one who does not beg, one who does not make an effort to heal, one who remembers stillness, And one who is aware of the distinction between peace and avoidance is the one who falls into this category. The one that does not have to experience pain, since it is aware that suffering is not the adversary. Rather, separation is the adversary. And now you are attached to your grief, to your body, to your knowing, and to your God, not as a being in the sky, but rather as the silent pulse that has been throbbing inside your chest the entire time. You are unable to receive it. There is no need to tell you that you're getting better. Instead of experiencing ecstasy, you feel a sense of embodiment. You take longer to walk, you breathe more deeply, and you respond to text messages more slowly. When the tears start to fall, you cry when you don't apologize. It is not necessary to provide a cause for your smile when the delight returns. Within your very being, you have attained the status of a sovereign. It was not power over life that you were seeking, but rather involvement with it. It was not assurance, but trust. It was not perfection, but presence that you were seeking. Now that you have a better understanding of the situation, you have finally given up on the wish to return to the person you were before the trauma. That particular version of you was incomplete. You are not free in that version of yourself. In that version of yourself, survival was the foundation. This particular version, on the other hand, is inspired by the facts. Additionally, the truth does not yell, it does not demand, and it does not pursue. Rather, it simply is. In the way that you choose to grow despite the aftermath of your own soul quake. In a way that you forgive without forgetting who you are. In the way that you hold space for yourself. In a way that you no longer apologize for your sensitivity. In the way that you protect your peace not with walls but with discernment. In the way that you forgive without forgetting who you are. Because healing, true healing, is not about repairing what has caused you pain. Rather, it is about recovering the person who has been harmed, calling them home, listening to them, embracing them, and loving them with a ferocity that says you don't have to disappear anymore. There is no need for you to conceal your pain. You are let to be here in your current state. And when this occurs, when your healing becomes an act of inclusion rather than erasure, the suffering undergoes a transformation. It does not own you anymore, and it does not define you any longer. Rather, it merely becomes a component of your mosaic, not a chapter to skip over, but rather a thread in the tapestry of your consciousness. What makes you real is not your accomplishments, not your answers, not your spiritual language, but rather your presence, your willingness to remain, and your devotion to the unfiltered reality of your experience. A thread that says, I was here, I burned, I broke, I felt it all, and I stayed. This is what makes you real. Healing is not a destination, but rather a state of being experienced by the individual. The door to that path is now open. There is no need for you to struggle in order to have completeness. You are already whole in all of your sorrow, your tenderness, and your maturation. It is not necessary for you to earn your position in this world. The fact that you breathe is evidence that you belong here. It is no longer necessary for you to flee from your suffering. It is not intended to destroy you. Rather, it is intended to open you up. So just let it happen. Allow the pain to be revered. Allow the stillness to be revered. And allow the gradual return to one's own self to be sufficient. Because it is. So you are. In every way, you were.